It's February 1st. And you know what it means? It's Black History Month. Now, I know some people are thinking, what in the world is this obviously white guy doing commenting on Black History? And I want to explain that to you. Um, uh, Black History Month is very much a part of our collective American national character. And to minimize it, I would think that would be very insulting. Um, and it sounds like a cliche, but you can argue that the rest of the year, when you observe history, pretty much white centric or Eurocentric. And I'm not really one to emphasize on identity politics, but I have no problem with the idea of a Black History Month. It's fine. And so every February, I do in my own way observe it, and just I wanted to comment on it for YouTube. Well, I mean, it was kind of referred to in the 1920s as Black History Week, and it was in the middle of February, and it was basically at a time to celebrate the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln, whose presidency liberated the black slaves out of slavery in the South, and Frederick Douglass, who was a major abolitionist figure. And it was, these two gentlemen were honored in the 19th century, and it was made into Black History Week. By 1970s, after just going through the 1960s with the modern civil rights movement, um, Black History Month started to become a recognized holiday, and it became more and more mainstream from 1970 onward. Now, here's something that I had no idea about. Apparently, Black History Month is observed in Ireland, Great Britain, France, the Netherlands, and Canada. Cool. Honestly, that's good. And I just wonder what a Black History Month would be like from a perspective of someone in Ireland, or someone in the UK, or someone in France, or the Netherlands, or Canada. I've never been to Netherlands, but the other countries I have visited, and I've visited Ireland, Great Britain, France, and Canada, and I'm just wondering what these societies, in what context and how they celebrate Black History Month. But I would consider it a positive thing. And you know, as I said, it's part of here in the United States. It's part of the collective American national character. And just and I want to make a side apology for not doing a commentary recently on Holocaust Remembrance Day, which took place in January 27th, when the Soviet army came in to liberate the concentration camps from the power of the Nazis. And so I was going to do a commentary, but it was a heavy news week, and as this channel continues to evolve, it will be on my criteria for next year. And then I want to mention that every June now is Pride History Month. Again, um, just just as I'm not an African American, just as I'm not Jewish, and just as I'm not part of the LBGT community, except I'm a heterosexual ally. Um, and I have no problems with observing and respecting Pride History Month either. Now, if there is a criticism of Black History Month, um, I have one, just one. And and as I said, and it would not matter because as far as me being a white guy, it doesn't matter from what I really think, but it matters in the context of two major historical figures there that I think have been omitted from Black History Month. I mean, I'm not saying it was totally omitted, but it's not as emphasized. There's there's too much on celebrities, too much on on even mainstream politicians and MLK, which MLK is very important. I'm not undermining the importance of MLK at all. But I think that there's also been a little bit of creeping commercialism kind of crept into it, and and I think that anytime commercialism is crept up into anything, it and I kind of think it kind of undermines its positive purpose. But I want to talk about two people that have been historically, in my view, omitted from Black History Month, or not as emphasized, and I just think it's a damn shame. And that would be A. Philip Randolph, and that would also be Bayard Rustin. Now, with A. Philip Randolph, in a way, you could say A. Philip Randolph was the predecessor to Martin Luther King. He was founder of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and he was very much a strong labor oriented activist, worked within the unions and worked to help the blacks kind of go into the trade union movement. And there was an African American influence that started to come into the trade union movement around the time of FDR's New Deal. I'll give you an example: the Southern Farmers Tenant Union in 1932 that was founded by, and I'm going to be partisan, by black and white members of the Socialist Party of America. And what happened was, even in the Jim Crow South, which Arkansas was a part of, the Southern Farmers Tenant Union broke through and did something wonderful. It became the first integrated union in the South. And not only did it become the first integrated union, they were able to negotiate for contracts that pay workers a decent wage. So there you have it. Even in the South, you have the standard of living starting to rise up for African Americans and whites, both, because both were in this together, because both groups are being exploited, and they took collective action to make sure that they were paid well and had good benefits and could enjoy the fruits of the labor. In other words, join that middle class American dream. The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters did the same thing. And so, and with the migration of blacks from the South up north, they were going into these manufacturing plants around, and they were, whether it was the auto car companies or whatever factory work there was throughout the north, they were able to elevate their standard of living far above what they would have been experiencing down in the south. And it was working for them just as well as it was working for whites. Now, I'm not saying it was perfect up in the north. I'm not saying that once blacks left the south and moved up north that everything was wonderful. Obviously, it wasn't. They have they suffer racism and discrimination up in the north too. But the point I'm trying to make, it was a process, and there was significant improvement. Um, in 1943, A. Philip Randolph was trying to organize an event in Washington D.C. for the original March for Jobs and Freedom, and basically it was to demand full racial equality for blacks in this country. And this United States was in World War II, and it kind of made FDR kind of nervous. Franklin Roosevelt, even though he was sympathetic toward racial equality, he was nervous about the issue. Although his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, was a strong vocal advocate for racial equality, she was unapologetic and very, very vocal and forthright about it. Franklin Roosevelt called A. Philip Randolph and pleaded to call off the march. And Philip Randolph said, it's time for equality. And basically can't wait. And a little side note, just as A. Philip Randolph saying it just can't wait. I hope that some of the progressives out there that wants to wait for the right conditions to have Medicare for all need to realize that there is no right conditions. You got to go and do it all the way, and you'll win your battles eventually. But you sit there and wait forever, what you wait for ain't ever going to come. And so I'm going to say that with regard to what went on with Force the Vote with Jimmy Dore, you could say it's equivalent to what's going on with the movement for racial equality decades ago before the civil rights movement started. Back to what I was saying. FDR basically asked A. Philip Randolph to call off the march. He was able to convince A. Philip Randolph to call off the march by making a condition or a promise that if you call off the march by by executive order, I will desegregate Washington, D.C. And in 1943, by executive order, Washington, D.C. became an integrated city. So the justice of racial equality was kind of put on hold, but it was still a major step forward. And A. Philip Randolph was working with what he could at the time. A. Philip Randolph was not just an advocate for African American, or excuse me, racial equality across the board. He was an advocate for labor. He was an advocate. He was also an advocate for socialism. A. Philip Randolph was a member of the Socialist Party of America, that same Socialist Party of America that helped founded the Southern Farmers Tenant Union in 1932. My notes, my notes, my notes. Another figure that's been kind of ignored is Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin was the man that basically met with Martin Luther King and urged Martin Luther King to lead a movement and work on the tactics of nonviolence to peacefully resist nonviolent direct action, following the examples of people like Gandhi of India. A. Philip Randolph was also a peace activist, and he was a socialist, like A. Philip Randolph, a member of the Socialist Party of America. But there was something that was very controversial about Bayard Rustin back in its time on an issue that's significantly less controversial today, but depending where you're at in America and what region of the country you live at in America, will still be controversial, but at the same time, less controversial than it was even maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And that was that, and going to use it in 1950s terminology. Bayard Rustin was a homosexual. He was gay, and that was frowned upon. And I'm being polite saying it, but it was frowned upon back in those days. He was very open about it, which was highly unusual. Um, And so while he was valued as somebody that had good ideas on how to conduct the civil rights movement, he was put in the back burner because if it would have been found out that that they were working with a known homosexual, it was feared that the movement could be shut down or defeated in public relations or what have you. And of course, there was a time when being a homosexual was seen as the same as being a communist. And that was back in the 1950s. You got today, there are prominent gay people who are conservatives. Don't know why when they belong to a party that hates their existence, but they're there. But uh, but I digress. So A. Philip Randolph and um, Bayard Rustin, although not obscure, superly obscure names, have become somewhat obscure over the years, which I kind of think is a shame. Um, but they made a difference, and the March for Jobs and Freedom in Washington D.C. against in 1963, where Martin Luther King delivered "I Had a Dream" speech, organized by A. Philip Randolph. The Socialist Party of America, at that time referred to as the Socialist Party Social Democratic Federation, were the main proponents of this civil rights march. So, I mean, it makes me proud as the as somebody that's in that partisan division in that little niche on the American left. Now, I'm technically not a member of any of the three successor organizations that the Socialist Party of America became currently. I'm hoping that that may change soon, but I have been in the Socialist Party USA and in Democratic Socialists of America, and I am hoping that a new Socialist Party of America could be founded soon, and it's actually in formation, being called the Social Democratic and Labor Party of America. Um, and I consider myself, you know, ready when it's formally going to exist. So I give my partisan perspective on this. But let's talk about the right today. And I'm talking about conservative figures who insist that they're colorblind, whether they mean it or not. They love to emphasize on Martin Luther King. And they talk about judging a man by the content of his character and not the color of his skin. Nice. If you mean it, fine. Um, who really love to play cynical politics would tell you that Martin Luther King was a Republican, and there might have been a time he would have been a Republican in the South. But Martin Luther King was also a socialist. I'm not going to say he was a member of the Socialist Party of America, but he orbited. That's kind of more or less where he orbited around. I would say, if anything, he was probably I would say, a fellow traveler of the Socialist Party of America. A. Philip Randolph, Bayard Rustin, um, Julian Bond, various other um, figures, civil rights figures who were with the SPA. Stokely Carmichael, who before he was radicalized, was in the Socialist Party of America. So yeah, we have a lot of prominent African American figures that were in this political party. So, but to suggest that that Martin Luther King would have been on board with today's Republican Party is ridiculous. Um, as I said, yeah, I mean, and especially in light of the Southern strategy, in light of the realignment that took place in the '60s, '70s, all the way and cemented down in the 1980 election of Ronald Reagan. No, Martin Luther King would not have been a modern day Republican. In fact, if anything, he would have been very critical of today's Democratic Party going in its corporate direction. I can't speak on behalf of a man that's dead, but it's just my guess. In 2016 and 2020, had Martin Luther King been living, he'd have been a Bernie bro. Black History Month, as I said, is largely positive, but I think that there needs to be more emphasis on labor. I would say socialist, but I understand American exceptionalism. Sometimes that exceptionalism is less than ideal, but the labor emphasis needs to be stressed too, because especially in this age where we have income inequality and all of that. Anyway, that's what I got to say about that. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you were kind of not that impressed, comment anyway. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you that if you're passionate about something, please, by all means, create a platform, utilize it because we're the muckrakers of our time. And hit that subscribe button, that notification bell. Help make this channel grow. And until next time, peace. I am American Social Democracy. Bernie Sanders for president in the year 2024.